Cloud shadows. Hello everybody and welcome to Organian's Puzzle Box. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make fake cloud shadows for your scene. Basically, Unreal Engine does come with some cloud shadows that are actually very much based on the volumetric cloud component, but nobody really knows how to use them or even if they're viable. So today I'm going to show you how to create a fake cloud shadow material to be used as a light function for your directional light. This is also going to be less performance costly, a lot more controllable, and you're actually going to be able to use it and enjoy nice cloud shadows across your landscape, because with the other system, you're not even going to be able to see it, to be honest. But I'll show you what I mean in the example. So let's not delay and let's start the tutorial. I've got here the Unreal Engine project open, the World Forge, and this is allowing us to actually see these cloud shadows in action inside the level, just so you kind of understand how they work. So you can see right there in the different distance, obviously there is light coming through the clouds, but then there's also these areas where there are the cloud shadows, and you can see them like these darker patches all around. Now let's just remove the actual clouds from these fake clouds that I've created, and this is how the scene would look like without any clouds. And then when I bring them in, you can see there's some in there right now popping in, and then I can obviously add the bigger amounts, or I could like even go to like extreme and have very, very dark clouds. And as you can see right now, there's all these shapes all around here that are generated. So let's go into another example level in which we will set up the cloud shadow material so that you can understand how it all functions and how you can use it yourself. Now, traditionally speaking, the Unreal Engine does have cloud shadows on its own based on the volumetric cloud component. So when I have the Atmos Forge into the scene over here, it does use the volumetric cloud component, and these shadows over here are being cast by these clouds above, and they're actually realistically being casted by the shape of these clouds. Now, the resolution of the shadow is quite blocky, it's not great, and also in order to actually even see these shadows, I had to effectively make a colossal a landscape in order to see it, and also you can kind of see the shadows kind of protruding in those directions as well, because the volumetric cloud component is meant to be almost a planetary level cloud system and not as not for small scale. So whenever you have like a cloud shadow like this would probably take up your entire map, to be honest. Now if I actually move the light pitch here, we'll be able to see just how these sort of like shadows change just as the day progresses through with the volumetric cloud component. But I can delete the Atmos Forge and instead go over to Window, to Environment Light Mixer, and we can add all of these systems in place like that. And now we have an entire scene with clouds, but there's no shadows being casted. So if you want to see the shadows of these, just go into your directional light, go over here where we can see the down here where it says atmosphere and cloud. Just then enable the cast cloud shadows, and now you can see that we have shadows from these clouds. And if I move the light around, you can see that it's kind of changing, but they're very low res, so you want to go over into the advanced tab in here and then have a look at increasing their resolution, basically trying to get a bit more of an effect. I'm not going to say that this is going to look as good as it did with the actual cloud, Atmos Forge, because the Atmos Forge is built to use the cloud shadow system that comes with Unreal Engine. But one thing you could do to make it a bit more prominent is to remove the exponential height fog, and then you should be able to see those shadows a bit more. But like I've said, very blocky, very bad. This tutorial is meant to show you how to create fake cloud shadows that are going to look a lot better than these, although they're not going to be as accurate as to, being casted by these clouds as these are. Anyway, let's get on with the material creation so that we can, you guys can implement it in your own project. The first thing we want to do is we want to create a new material. So I'm going to call this fake cloud shadows. And then we can right click it and create a material instance. Now this material instance will be used as a light function, but we first have to declare that. So we're going to open the material itself, and then in here we're going to change this material domain from a surface to a light function, which will allow us to use this into our directional light. So if you go back in here with the directional light selected, scroll down to the light function, and you can add this material instance into that slot. Obviously nothing will happen because as of right now there is nothing inside the material. So one other thing that we've got in here is a texture that I'm going to supply for you guys to use as an example. And you can just drop this in here, and we're going to use this texture to create this kind of, the shadows onto the ground. And this texture effectively links over into the emissive color, and we can press apply. Now, obviously, right now, nothing really looks as it should, because if we go very very close to be able to actually see the cloud shadows, you'll notice that it's just this repeatable pattern of this texture that we added. Okay, so this is where we need to manipulate the UVs of the texture, and we also need to blend between two of these textures. So basically we want to have two textures that are being blended together, because we want to have one that's got like big shapes and one that has like small shapes of the shadows that we're trying to display. Now, another issue that we have when we look at the ground is the fact that we're not actually displaying as it should. Like these are the clouds, and this should be the shadow, not this. So what we want to do is we want to minus the output of this color, and then we also want to control it using a power node, because we want to be able to decide its contrast. So I'm going to add a scalar parameter in here, and I'm going to call this cloud 01 contrast. Okay, and this is going to go into the power node, and then we can do a multiply node here, which will allow us to now also control just how the amount of the cloud. So I'm going to add in a cloud 0 on. I'm going to call this amount. I'm going to feed it over into the multiply node like that, and then this goes into the emissive color over here. And now we can press apply again just to see what the changes are that we've made. Now, obviously, right now we have a value of 0, so we do want to put like a default value of 1 in there, just for the argument's sake. And now you can see that we're getting a better, like the shape of the cloud is definitely a lot more subdued and looks a bit better, but obviously the scale is completely off, so we need to fix that, and it's also a bit distorted as well. Oh, and don't forget guys, the World Forge project and the Atmos Forge is available on my Patreon for the price of a coffee, or available on Fab if you'd like to give it a go. It basically is going to support the channel if you do end up getting it. It's actually a passion project of mine that I am looking to develop further and further, with update 1.1 right around the corner, bringing some amazing new features and shader improvements, which is going to take nanite displacement to a whole new level, unlike anything you've seen on the marketplace so far. Now, for us to properly animate and pan the fake cloud shadows, and also to be able to properly scale it and also give it a more natural sort of swaying move, we're going to create a new material function. So I'm going to control space, right click, go to material and select material function. I'm going to call this MF, and basically we can say fake cloud shadows panner, basically, because that's what it's going to be. And then we can double click and open it, and in here we have an output result, and this is going to be cloud 1. So we're just going to name it as cloud 1. And now from here we can actually start, like any good system, with a texture coordinate, and this is going to be used to basically create our tiling for our clouds. So I can add a multiply in here, connect the texture coordinate to it, and then a scalar parameter, which I'm going to call this cloud 01 tiling. This is going to feed into the multiply node, and both of these will, this will feed into an add node, because now we also want to add an offset. So we're going to add a divide in here, and a scalar parameter. We're going to call this offset, and this offset, by the way, can affect both clouds at the same time if we're going to use an offset for both. If not, we'll just leave it here. We can plug this into the divide node over here, and then leave this to a value of, let's say, 6 for now, and we're going to put this into the add node like that. Now we have this is going to determine our UV tiling, and now we want to also start working on the procedure of panning. So we want to pan the horizontal and the vertical axes independently. So we're going to actually drag out a new node in here, and we're going to use a component mask to only get the red channel, which is going to be, as I said to you, is one of the axes, and in this particular case, it's going to be the horizontal axis. And then from here, we can drag a new component mask, and this is going to be the green channel, which is going to be a vertical, right? So now we've separated these two, and we can create the time panner function. So for the x-axis or the horizontal axis, we are going to use a scalar parameter, which is going to be cloud 0, 1, and we're going to say speed x or speed u from horizontal. Then we're going to search for a time node like this, and then we're going to multiply these together, so put them nicely together like that. And here's the nice bit about the x-axis. We're going to run this through a sine node so that we allow the value to fluctuate between -1 and 1, which will allow a more swaying movement of the cloud. Then we can add these two together, right, like this, and then they will have to append with the other. So I'm just going to do append vector. This is going to append with the other, the vertical axis from here. Now, for this one, we effectively want to kind of copy the same thing, but we're not going to use the sine node for this one. So we just want, all of these. Plus the add node from here, so we can put them like that. Obviously, this multiply just goes straight into the add node, and the mask goes straight in here. We do need to change the name of this to y, and then this will connect to the append node, and this will go into the output like that. Now we can press apply and go back to our material, and we can drop this new material function in here, and this can connect to our UVs like that, and we can press apply and look at the results. Now, obviously, you're not really going to see anything, and that's because we need to go into our material function. So I'm going to, our material instance from here, and then we're able to change the default values. So with this, we want to play around with the tiling, especially because right now we have a tiling of 0, which is causing us no end of problems. So if we put a tiling of 1, this is how small it is, a 5 of 10. So it gets smaller the more you tile it. So you want to do maybe like a 0.01, or maybe, something like that, right? Now, we can also decide in what direction it goes. So you can see in here, it's kind of, I'm just going to put it like that, 0.01. And then we got the speed y, and then this could be like, if it's speed of 1, that's how fast it goes. So maybe this will move a bit slower, something like that. Now we're moving these clouds a little bit. Now you can see that there is a limit to how much your view can actually show shadows. Now, as I said to you, this is an incredibly large scene. Now, let me show you what I mean by how large this scene is. If I go over into the world settings and change this to a third person character, and I press play, let me just show you just how small we are. So you can't even, the cloud shadows are so far away from us that we can barely even see them. That's how small the character is. This map would probably take minutes upon minutes in order to reach the edge of it. It's a large, very, very large level, right? So this is what I mean is like the previous map that you saw, the World Forge map, it was probably around this size, right? Now, let's look at doing the next blend, which is going to be the second cloud in this particular system. So we're going to go back into our material function in here, and we are going to copy and paste this output. Hopefully I've done that. So Control C, Control V, and then we're going to call this O2. So then this is the second output. Now, predominantly, you basically want to copy the same kind of values like what we did before. Like literally, I'm not even joking. You literally want to copy the same values, but then you want to rename them to Cloud 02. So this means that everything in here that you had 01 just needs to become 02. Now here for the offset, again, you may want to have an offset or you may not want to have an offset. I'll leave that to you. I'm going to not use an offset this time. Which means that I basically can skip this add node here. So I can just cut this off from the chain, and then I'll just feed these straight in, which also saves a little bit on calculation as well. When we, in the final material, although this is not an expensive material anyway. Right, so once this is done, you can press apply and go back into our material, and this is Cloud 2 over here. So this can go in UVs like that. We do want to copy this entire setup that we did previously, okay? Now, we're not, we're going to have to blend these together, but we're not just going to like simply blend them, using a blurb node or whatever. We're going to use a different node, which is called a blend darken. So let me just type that in. It's effectively like a like a Photoshop blend. So we're going to put these together. So basically when they do overlap, you do actually get a darker cloud feature, cloud look as well. Let's just make sure that we have, both of these have been named properly. So this is 1 and this is 2. Now I'm going to press apply, go back into here. And now I need to set up the, like I've said, the settings for the second cloud as well. Now this is going to be the smaller one. So in terms of tiling, I'm going to look at 0.2. Maybe that's a bit too much. So 0.03 is what I was using before. So maybe something like that, okay? And you do kind of want all of these to kind of move in the same direction. So 0.01 and 0.001. So they're all kind of go in the same direction. Now you may want to offset the other, the bigger clouds like that, so they don't specifically come into contact on top of each other. Now, obviously, you can, decide if you want them to be thinner or so we can do them a bit thinner for the second layer. And then for the other layer, we could do them maybe a bit thick, maybe something like that, right? And now we've got the contrast, which dictates how, how visible they are or how, least visible they are. And this is going to help you to art direct this and just make it look a lot cleaner, a lot nicer. Now, obviously, you can use a lot of other different textures. So I'll show you, for example, you can have a multi color texture, meaning that, for example, if we go back into the material here, you could use this noise, right? And we can do this twice like this. And this could be cloud 1, cloud 2, and this could be cloud 1. And then we could take the red channel, for example, and put it in here. And this is going to be the green channel, go over here, and then we're going to press apply. And now you'll notice that the, clouds look a bit different. Obviously, we do have to also change the settings here because, again, you want to look at how the tiling is conveyed. Right now, for example, the tiling for this is probably a bit too big, too small, sorry, but the amount is probably, the contrast is probably a bit too much as well, or the amount is too much. So we're just going to have to play around until we find the best setting. And now for some final tips and tricks on this. So for example, you'll notice that the, as I said to you, this area here is kind of where it all finishes, but you do have this fade distance that you can increase by quite a lot, which allows you to see those cloud shadows for far longer distances. You can also disable the brightness here. So for example, you could make it so that that area is no longer dark, but it's actually white, or depending on your need. But in general, I would just increase the fade distance, maybe something like that. You don't want to push it all the way. You do want to mask it at some point. Now, one thing that you might also wonder now is, why the hell is this so stretched? Well, there is a reason, and that's because where the light source is. So if we actually change the light source, you'll notice that this noise does change with it. So the further the sun is, the more these shadows are elongated, and the higher they are, the square, the squarer they get. And at this point, it's probably the best point now. This is the best area in which for you to start editing to make sure that you're getting the the kind of look and feel that you're looking for. You don't want too much contrast, and obviously it really depends on the type of type of texture you're using here, because maybe the texture that I was using earlier is a bit too strong. So I'm just going to use this again. And this one is a lot more controllable, the one that I'm giving, I'm putting into the description below for you guys to use, because you can have this nice gradient here. And then you can obviously add more, more of a look right there. Obviously, these are moving a bit too fast, like these clouds are moving a bit too fast. But if we press play here, you'll notice that where your character, from your character's perspective, this won't be very visible to them in terms of like the tiling and so on. So it really depends just how far away your character is. And as I said, the speed, I think, makes a big difference. You don't want to move these clouds too fast because it will look very odd if they do. And they won't obviously match what's going up above, the clouds from above, but they're not really meant to. I mean, as I said, you wouldn't be able to see the cloud shadows that come with the default Unreal Engine anyway from the ground level with a character this big, because they are freaking massive. But that's all I have for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Hope you learned something new today. Please feel free to leave a comment in the section below if you have anything to add to it or any suggestion that you may have. I would like to extend my appreciation to all of my Patreons. Now remember, for the price of a coffee, you can subscribe to the lowest tier on Patreon and get access to over 50 Unreal Engine projects to be used by yourself in your commercial projects or your personal projects. So feel free to have a look on Patreon. As I said, over 50 projects about any possible topic that you may want. So yeah, with that said, I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you for watching and keep creating.